Well, hello. And what are you doing in my storage unit? What? What's that? You want a story? I know. I have a great story to tell you. It involves a wire hanger and a rubber ball. But first, are you in? Come on in and sit down. Are you good? All right. You know, this place is a really cool place to tell stories because it's full of memories. It's my storage unit. So I like to start all my stories with once upon a time, a long, long time ago. Yes, this was actually a very long time ago, almost 40 years ago when I was about 10 years old. I lived on a fruit farm. So I grew up in different places, just a few. One of them was a little house downtown, and when we left that, then we moved to a farm. It was a fruit farm, and there were Bing cherry trees that my dad would pull his van under, and we would put the ladder up and climb the ladder and pick all the cherries, huge cherry trees. There were walnut trees and filbert trees and prune trees, tons of prune trees. We had a prune orchard, an Italian prune orchard. I loved sitting in those trees in the prune orchard and eating prunes till my stomach hurt. And we had pie cherry trees, and we had plum trees and apple trees. We had tons of raspberry vines and blackberry vines, and my dad had a huge garden, and we had a cornfield, and it was just a really wonderful time in my life. Well, we had this little tiny farmhouse, and I'll never forget my grandma's coming over, and at harvest time they would sit outside the doors or the screen door to the kitchen, and I would go in and out, and I'd slam the door, and I'd get yelled at for slamming the door. But I loved seeing my grandparents there, or my great grandmas and my great grandma and my grandma. Remember the story of my grandmas? They would snap peas, and we would go to the cannery, and lots of harvesting and lots of canning, and it kind of got into who I am. But one of the neatest things about this farmhouse was that it had a basement, and it had a middle floor where we lived, and then it had an attic. And the attic was very scary. It had like a trundle bed up there, and you could hear the rain on it when it would rain. But that attic was a little scary sometimes. There was a really cool room in that attic that my dad kind of painted and made a nice little room, and he put the TV up there. So one thing we liked to watch when we were little was Gilligan's Island, and at the time there was no DVDs, there wasn't stuff like that, but there was but TV. If you could catch it at a certain time of the day, then you could watch it. Well, my dad said, because my dad wanted us outside, he wanted us to be playing outside and not sitting around the boob tube. So he put the TV in there purposefully and said, okay, well, you can go up there anytime you want and watch the TV. He put the TV up there, and my sister and I would, once in a while, we would climb up the stairs, and you open this creaky door, and the stairs are super narrow and super steep, and you climb up, and each time, you would think, you'd make the creaking sound. We'd go up there, and we'd look in the dark, and we would run screaming over to that little room that had a nice bright window and everything, but there was no door in it, so you could see the attic from it. And we'd get through about 15 minutes of Gilligan's Island, and then we couldn't take it anymore, and we would blow out of there and come back downstairs and go outside and play. Well, the story I want to tell you, so that's the setting for this story, is this little farm that I grew up on. Well, there is a reason now that I always have 1 or 2 wire hangers in my closet now because of this next story I'm going to tell you. And I have wire hangers because of what happened. Back in the old days, wire hangers is pretty much all you had. I don't remember any kind that we had like we have now. So some of you may not even recognize this or have a wire hanger anymore, but really crucial to the story. So we had a dog on this farm, and this dog was beautiful, kind of looked like Lassie, only black and white, and we really loved this dog. Her name was Candy, and Candy was she was part of our family. We loved Candy. So one thing that Candy liked to do was chase balls. So she would chase a ball like this. We would throw the ball and she would go chase it, and she liked to jump in the air and catch it with, but the balls that one of the balls that we had a hole in it. And I think the ball was knobbed. So I don't think it was smooth like this. I think it was knobbed, but it had a hole in it. So one day my dad's out there and he's throwing the ball for Candy. And Candy jumps up and grabs and catches it, but unfortunately it went down and lodged in her throat. Instead of catching it in her jaws, it lodged in her throat. Well, of course, that is not a good thing, is it? No. This will make you not breathe, right? So if we couldn't get this ball out of Candy's throat, she would have died because she couldn't breathe. So, of course, everyone was like, whoa, what do we do? What do we do? And my dad told me to go pray. And then we prayed and prayed, and it was, all of this is happening super fast. But then my dad got an idea, and he's like, go get me a wire hanger. So we ran and got Daddy a wire hanger, and he brought it back out, and he quickly undid it. You know how it's kind of tight, screwed up right there? I don't know how to say it. It's wound up right there. He unscrewed it, made it straight, and then took the very end of it and made a little loop on the very end, really tiny loop. And we just started praying. And he didn't want to put his hand down Candy's throat because he thought perhaps Candy would bite him. So he didn't want to do that because Candy was scared and she was starting to die because she couldn't breathe. And so he didn't want to put his hand down there, so that's why we needed the hook. So he just prays, and I think he told me that he closed his eyes and he just shoved that hanger down there, praying that hole would be in a position where he would be able to grab that ball and fling it out. And sure enough, he shoved that down in there and he flung that ball out, and Candy started breathing again, and we all just fell to our knees and was, thank you, Papa, thank you, Papa. How cool is that? He saved Candy's life. I mean, how he gave my dad the idea to get the wire hanger, to make that little hook, how he provided that hole to be right in the right spot, and how he made all of that work together so that Candy didn't die. Praise Papa for good stories like that. I bet you have some wonderful stories like that to tell too. And I hope that you remember those stories, because you're going to need them as you grow up. Absolutely. So I love to end my stories by saying, and she lived happily ever after. This story, I'm going to say that Candy will live happily ever after, because I believe, of course, Candy right now is sleeping. She died. She got old and died, but she's sleeping and she's waiting for the King to return. And I believe that the King of the universe will find fabulous, great, immense pleasure for himself to bring back our animals that we love, animals that were part of our family, who we would consider part of our family. I think he's going to bring them back. So yes, I think Candy will live happily ever after with us. Yay! So thank you for coming by today. That ends my story, and I hope to see you again. Come back for another story, okay? Bye-bye.